Namaskar, good evening. You are watching Rajya Sabha television. I am Smriti Rastogi with News Tonight. Let's begin the bulletin with the top headlines. India fully committed to support development in Nepal, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Jointly inaugurates South Asia's first cross-border petroleum pipeline with Nepalese Prime Minister. Pipeline aimed at ensuring uninterrupted fuel supply to landlocked Nepal at lower cost. India hits back at Pakistan in UNHRC, says false narrative coming from epicenter of terrorism, asserts that as a result of recent legislative measures, progressive policies will now be fully applicable to our citizens in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Pakistan is aiding, training and funding terrorists, says Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu at a meeting with Panchayat representatives of Jammu and Kashmir. Advises them to avoid rumours, reiterates government's commitment to restore peace and development in Jammu and Kashmir. Government task force will identify sectors for investing in infrastructure, says Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in Chennai. On the completion of the first 100 days of the Modi government's second term, Union Minister Smriti Irani and Jitendra Singh also highlight its achievements. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays rich tributes to Arun Jaitley at a prayer meet. Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh join leaders from various parties in paying homage to the late Finance Minister. Our top story this evening, India on Tuesday issued a strong response to Pakistan over its Kashmir rant at the United Nations Human Rights Council. Vijay Thakur Singh, Secretary East in the External Affairs Ministry, said that Pakistan's charges are concocted and false. She asserted that India's steps on Kashmir are legal and within the Constitution, calling it a sovereign decision and an internal matter for India. Without naming Pakistan, she said that the world is aware that the fabricated narrative comes from the epicenter of global terrorism, where ringleaders are sheltered for years. And this country conducts cross-border terrorism as a form of diplomacy. She further added that there is a need to call out those who are misusing the UN platform for malicious political agendas under the grab of human rights.
Mr. President, India holds the credentials of being the world's largest democracy. Our Constitution guarantees fundamental rights to all our citizens without distinction. Our independent judiciary, free media, vibrant civil society provides an effective framework for protection of human rights. My government is taking affirmative actions by adopting progressive policies to promote socio-economic equality and justice. As a result of recent legislative measures, these progressive policies will now be fully applicable to our citizens in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. These will end gender discrimination, better protect juvenile rights, and make applicable rights to education, information, and work. The decisions were taken by our Parliament after a fully televised debate and enjoys widespread support. These were sovereign decisions, entirely internal to India. No country can accept interference in its internal affairs, certainly not India. Despite challenging circumstances, Jammu and Kashmir civil administration is ensuring basic services, essential supplies, mobility and connectivity. Democratic processes have been initiated, restrictions are being eased continuously, temporary preventive measures were needed to ensure security in the face of credible threats of cross-border terrorism. The world, in particular India, has suffered greatly on account of state-sponsored terrorism. It is time to collectively take decisive and firm action against terror groups who threaten fundamental right to life. We must speak out. Silence alone emboldens terrorists and their supporters. Mr. President, one delegation here has given a running commentary with offensive rhetoric of false allegations and concocted charges against my country. The world is aware that this fabricated narrative comes from the epicenter of global terrorism, where ringleaders are sheltered for years. This country conducts cross-border terrorism as a form of alternate diplomacy. National Register for Civil Rights is a statutory, transparent, non-discriminatory legal process mandated and monitored by the Supreme Court of India. Its implementation will comply with Indian laws. As a responsible member of the international community, India firmly believes in a constructive approach to promote and protect human rights.
Earlier in the day, Pakistan demanded an international investigation by the UN Human Rights Council into the situation in Kashmir. However, speaking to the media soon after his address, Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi described Jammu and Kashmir as an Indian state. Pakistan has always referred to Kashmir as an Indian-administered state. India maintains Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of the country since it legally acceded to the Union of India in 1947.
To go into the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir and see for themselves what the reality is. Into the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, into the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, to go into the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir and see for themselves.
And for more on this, we'll go across to our correspondent Akhilesh Suman, who is joining us from the newsroom. Akhilesh, what important points has India stressed on in its reply to Pakistan at UNHRC?
Smriti, this was not a statement in reply to Pakistan, but this was a statement in the aftermath of UNHRC's report. And actually, the plenary session is going on since morning, and Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has spoken. And instead of going into the full report, he only chose to attack India. So I think India has a case. India has a case because India's name was there in UNHRC's report, and that is why India has spoken about it. And in the UNHRC report, it was mentioned that Jammu and Kashmir situation, abrogation of Article 370, and the situation in the aftermath of abrogation of Article 370. And in that context, Secretary of External Affairs Ministry Vijay Thakur Singh was speaking, and she mentioned 3 points basically. She mentioned one thing that, abrogation of Article 370 was there to ensure development in Jammu and Kashmir, and also to ensure that various types of rights of people who are living in Jammu and Kashmir must be restored. And this was the way by which human rights and other right to education and even right to female and juvenile can be established in Jammu and Kashmir, and that is why abrogation of 370 has been done.
Right.
And it has been done in full view of people of the world.
Right.
It was televised debate in both houses of parliament in India, and India being the largest democracy has various methods to checkmate whatever provisions are being made in the parliament. So it is always under the scrutiny of judiciary also. So I think Vijay Thakur Singh made it clear to the UNHRC report that whatever measures have been taken in Jammu and Kashmir, it is just to stop misuse of Pakistan by cross-border terrorism.
Absolutely.
so that the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir can be ensured in the aftermath of abrogation of Article 370.
Right. And Akhilesh, how effectively, very quick, my next question, how effectively on a global platform has India allayed the apprehensions about the abrogation of Article 370?
Yes, right. That is what Vijay Thakur Singh made it very clear that abrogation of Article 370 was not, abrogation of human rights of people of Jammu and Kashmir. It was rather to bolden, rather to strengthen the human rights situation, right to life, right to education, right to property, everything. So I think the world which might be, some of the countries might be impressed with the Pakistan's narrative. One country can be mentioned, China, who mentioned Article 370 and also Jammu and Kashmir. But I think Vijay Thakur Singh was very successful, very precisely, and
Right.
very pointedly. She allayed the fear of people of the world.
Apprehensions. Exactly.
Apprehension, whatever was there. So I think she told that limited restrictions have been put in Jammu and Kashmir so that situation can improve and terrorists cannot take the benefit out of it. Smriti.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Akhilesh, for joining us and giving us all those insights into that very important development. And India has once again called for next generation reforms in the United Nations Security Council. Speaking at a Security Council debate at the United Nations, India's permanent representative to the UN, Syed Akbaruddin, said peacekeeping currently is in no man's land and called for reforms in peacekeeping based on incentivization, innovation and institutionalization.
Institutionalization of an approach where all key actors, especially troop-contributing countries, are associated in a consistent and predictable manner in the decision-making matrix has been now discussed for decades. Second, further incentivizing women peacekeepers is now essential. In 1993, during the first spurt of peacekeeping, women made 1% of those deployed as uniformed personnel. Today, it is 6%. In 26 years, we have increased the share of women by 5%. At this rate, it may not be possible to meet even minimum targets. Third, innovation in capacity building of peacekeepers needs to be a priority.
And the Ministry of External Affairs on Tuesday rejected the reference to Jammu and Kashmir in the joint statement issued by China and Pakistan. India has also called on both the countries to stop activities related to China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is in India's territory that has been illegally occupied by Pakistan since 1947. MEA spokesperson Ravish Kumar also underscored that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India and rejected the reference to Jammu and Kashmir issued after the recent visit of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to Islamabad. And South Asia's first cross-border pipeline for petroleum products was jointly inaugurated by the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan. The project was opened via video conferencing. India and Nepal on Tuesday inaugurated the 60-kilometer-long Motihari-Amlekhganj petroleum product pipeline on Tuesday. The project is the first-ever cross-border petroleum product pipeline in South Asia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli jointly inaugurated it from their offices in New Delhi and Kathmandu via video link. During the video conference, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated India's commitment to support the development of Nepal and expressed hope that both nations will broaden their partnership.
हमारे विदेश मंत्रियों ने काठमांडू में अपनी मुलाकात में आपसी सहयोग के सभी क्षेत्रों में प्रगति का जायजा अभी हाल ही में लिया था। मुझे उम्मीद है कि हम अपनी भागीदारी को और व्यापक बनाने तथा विविध क्षेत्रों में अपनी साझेदारी को और गहरा करने के लिए तेजी से आगे बढ़ेंगे। एक्सेलेंसी, नेपाल की प्रायोरिटीज के अनुसार उसके विकास में सहयोग के लिए भारत के कमिटमेंट को मैं आज एक बार फिर दोहराना चाहता हूं।
Prime Minister Modi also pointed out that the project was built in a record 15 months within barely half of its 30-month deadline.
पिछले कुछ वर्षों में हमारे बीच हाईएस्ट पॉलिटिकल लेवल पर अभूतपूर्व नजदीकी आई है और नियमित संपर्क रहा है। पिछले 1.5 वर्षों में मेरे मित्र प्रधानमंत्री ओली जी और मैं 4 बार मिल चुके हैं। इन मुलाकातों से आपसी विश्वास पक्का हुआ है और परस्पर हित के आधार पर हमारी साझेदारी मजबूत हुई है।
Nepalese Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli said that the pipeline was a big achievement for Nepal.
This pipeline project is the first of its kind between Nepal and India and in South Asia. I believe it will not only save time, reduce cost, lessen road traffic, and reduce air pollution in transporting petroleum products from India to Nepal, but also open avenues in Nepal for expanding similar pipelines across the country.
The landmark pipeline will carry fuel from Barauni refinery via Motihari in Bihar to Amlekganj in Nepal and will ensure smooth, cost-effective and environment-friendly supply of petroleum products to Nepal. India constructed the pipeline at a cost of 325 crore rupees that was borne entirely by the Indian Oil Corporation. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has reiterated the government's commitment to achieving the target of $5 trillion economy. Addressing the media in Chennai, Sitharaman said the task force set up to boost investments in infrastructure projects is in the process of identifying sectors.
We've announced 100 lakh crores, and that is the amount which I think will have to be speeded up for infrastructure related projects, for which I have appointed a task force which shall very speedily identify projects through which this money can be front loaded. This committee which I've constituted has started working, and we are in the process of identifying projects with which we can speedily get this money pushed down for the project itself.
Meanwhile, in Kolkata, Union Minister Smriti Irani addressed the media to highlight the achievements of the first 100 days of the Narendra Modi government. Irani said that the government has transferred 8,955 crore rupees directly to the accounts of farmers.
Under the Modi government and PM Kisan Yojana, the total transfer of monies into the bank accounts of poor farmers now stands at 20,250 crore rupees. The government has dedicated itself to labour reform. 32 central laws have been transformed into 4 codes, which now seek to benefit 50 crore unorganized sector workers across the country.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi met his counterpart from St. Vincent and Grenadines in New Delhi on Tuesday. During his meeting with Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, both leaders agreed to enhance cooperation between the two countries, including in the areas of skill development, training, education, finance, culture and disaster management. Prime Minister Gonsalves noted the enormous goodwill for India in St. Vincent and Grenadines and also in Caribbean and Latin American region. This is the first ever visit by a Prime Minister from St. Vincent and Grenadines to India. Some more developments. The Indian Air Force on Tuesday resurrected the highly decorated 17 Squadron Golden Arrows, which will operate the first squadron of Rafale fighter jets in the near future. The resurrection ceremony was presided over by IAF Chief Air Marshal B.S. Dhanua, who described the Golden Arrows as the epitome of excellence and dedication. Incidentally, the Air Force Chief had commanded the 17th Squadron during the Kargil conflict in 1999. According to the reports, the first batch of Rafale jets are scheduled to be formally handed over to Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on October 8th in France. The jets are set to arrive in India in May 2020. The Indian Air Force will deploy 1 squadron each of the Rafale combat aircraft at its air bases in Ambala in Haryana and Hashimara in West Bengal.
The squadron truly deserves to be resurrected with a Rafale aircraft. I also congratulate Air Force Station Ambala for being the first base of the Rafale aircraft in the Indian Air Force. This is not the first time it has happened. This was also the first base in which we inducted a modern technology aircraft when the Jaguars came into the Indian Air Force. My good wishes to the station personnel of Ambala, and may the fortunes of 17th Squadron continue in its life of Udyam Ajasatram.
ASEAN on Tuesday agreed to India's long-pending demand to review the India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. This was agreed upon during the meeting between economic ministers of ASEAN and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in Bangkok on Tuesday during the 16th AEM India consultations. The two sides also decided to constitute a joint committee for this purpose. Now the news from Jammu and Kashmir, where 8 Lashkar-e-Taiba militants were arrested from Sopore area of Kashmir's Baramulla district for threatening local residents. They were arrested after posters intimidating area residents surfaced in the Sopore area of North Kashmir's Baramulla district. Police has recovered computers and other items that were used to publish them. They are also investigating the role of the arrested militants in the recent killing of civilians in the area.
Yesterday, a group working with Jaish-e-Mohammed has been apprehended in Sopore area, wherein those people were doing that activity on behalf of their militant outfit. They were printing posters threatening people, threatening fruit growers. They are associates of militants. They are actually not pact-trained militants, but they are associates, OGWs, working with the militants for a pretty long time. They were using computers and all to print threatening posters and then pasting them at various places, including Fruit Mandi Sopore.
Actor turned politician Urmila Matondkar on Tuesday announced her resignation from the Congress party. This comes just 6 months after she joined the party and unsuccessfully contested her maiden Lok Sabha election. Urmila blamed petty in-house politics for quitting the Congress. Matondkar was defeated by BJP's stalwart Gopal Shetty in the elections. Meanwhile, in another jolt to the Congress party, former Maharashtra Minister Kripa Shankar Singh also quit the Congress. Singh had served as a Mumbai Congress chief and was also a minister in the Congress-NCP coalition government for 15 years. On Tuesday, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu said that bilateral talks with Pakistan will be held only on the issue of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Interacting with a delegation of Sarpanch and Panch from Jammu and Kashmir in Delhi, the Vice President pointed out that Article 370 was only a temporary and transitory provision in the Constitution, and its dilution will accelerate the pace of development in the state. The Vice President also expressed happiness that 74% of the electorate had voted in the Panchayat elections held under governor's rule after a long time. Naidu said with dilution of Article 370, Panchayats will become more dynamic as the funds, functions and functionaries would be devolved to them. During the interaction, Vice President also suggested that it should be made mandatory to hold elections to local bodies every 5 years.
जम्मू कश्मीर में किसी का जमीन कोई बाहर का लोगों का लेने का सवाल ही नहीं है, संभव नहीं है। आप निश्चिंत रहिए, अपना आपका जमीन आपके पास ही रहेगा। नंबर 1, कोई बाहर का स्टेट वाले कुछ दुष्प्रचार चल रहे, मुझे मालूम पड़ा, कोई महाराष्ट्र वाला आके, कोई गुजरात वाला आके, कोई बिहार वाला आके, कुछ नहीं होने वाले। हाँ, व्यापार के लिए, पढ़ने के लिए आप लोग वहाँ जाएंगे, वहाँ का लोग यहाँ आएंगे, टूरिज्म के लिए वहाँ का लोग आएंगे। जब बाहर से लोग आएंगे ना, तभी ना टूरिज्म बढ़ेगा, नहीं तो टूरिज्म कैसा बढ़ेगा।
And amid incessant rains in Gujarat, over 1,000 people living along the banks of Narmada River in Gujarat's Bharuch district were shifted to safer places on Tuesday. The water level of the river rose to 31 feet, above the danger mark of 28 feet due to discharge from Sardar Sarovar Dam. The Met Department is predicting heavy to very heavy rainfall in Saurashtra and South Gujarat over the next 2 days. Around 22 villages are affected by the floodwaters. Heavy rains also continue to lash parts of Madhya Pradesh. The Indian Meteorological Department has warned of heavy to extremely heavy rainfall in 32 districts in the next 24 hours. A prayer meeting for late Arun Jaitley was held at the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Delhi on Tuesday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi joined many prominent leaders, including Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, in paying rich tributes to the departed leader. Various opposition leaders also remembered Arun Jaitley with many personal accounts of their association with him. An emotional Prime Minister Modi said that he will always regret not being in the country to pay his last respects to the dear friend. The Prime Minister was brought on an official program when 66-year-old former Finance Minister passed away in Delhi on 24th of August.
इतने लंबे कालखंड तक घनिष्ठ मित्रता और उसके अंतिम दर्शन मैं नहीं कर पाया। मेरे मन पर इसका बोझ हमेशा बना रहेगा। वे सर्वमित्र थे, वे सर्वप्रिय थे और वे अपनी प्रतिभा के कारण, अपने पुरुषार्थ के कारण, अपने प्रभाव के कारण जिसको भी जहां पर भी उपयोगी हो सकते थे, वे हमेशा उपयोगी होते थे।
We have lost a good man in public life. We have lost a decent human being. We have lost a respected and able professional, a witty thinker, a lifelong student of politics, a remarkable communicator, a committed pillar of his party, and a friend to many, many people.
And that's all we have for you in this edition of News Tonight. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.
Thank you.